Hi there, everybody. I haven't made a video in a while, and I thought that to come back to make things easier, to get back in the swing of things with editing and recording, I'd make a quick tier list video, or not so quick. We'll see how that goes. Ranking the episodes of The X Files of the first season because I've been watching a lot of X Files recently, and I really enjoy it, and I kind of just want to share my thoughts on it. This will probably, depending on how I feel and do, I'd like to rank the other seasons, and eventually I'd like to make a why I love the X Files video and kind of talk about the kind of overall themes and the characters and my favorite episodes and things in a more structured video. But for now, we're gonna just talk about the episodes normally and rank them in a tier list format. A big reason I want to talk about this is of how culturally significant the X Files is. Actually, everyone's heard of the X Files. Older people in my life have generally like watched some, usually not all of it though. And then younger people don't really know what it is. They probably most know it from like the Illuminati memes in the, I want to say like late 2010s or mid 2010s, where that the theme was used for those memes. But they don't know much about it, and I feel like it's had such an impact on like popular culture and other shows like Supernatural. Is a really good example of something X Files has had a massive impact on. But no one's seen it, and I think more younger people should watch it. More people should watch it in general and watch all of it because it's really good. And this is kind of made to like discuss the X Files for people who have watched it, so they can hear someone else's opinion because that's something I really like to hear, especially when I'm watching. I like to hear what other people think of the episodes. So this is also going to be a kind of companion. If you want to watch it and then hear someone's thoughts after, maybe it'll, I don't know, help you think a bit more. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, whether you've watched the X Files or not. And if you haven't, definitely check it out. I will be like spoiling bits, but I don't feel like that should change much of your enjoyment. I'd encourage you to watch, and if it sounds interesting, like go watch the X Files after, or like midway through the video or whatever. You don't have to come back. Just watch it. It's great. It's a really good time, and there is a lot of X Files. There's 11 seasons. Most of the seasons are like 24 episodes long, so you got a lot of content there. One other thing, I guess, before we start ranking this, is I will like quickly clarify what our ranking criteria is. I'm not gonna do S, A, B, C, D because it's a little nebulous. I prefer to just clearly label my tiers, and we only have 4. We have amazing for amazing episodes, just really good ones, really enjoyable ones with like a lot of, I guess, meat on the bone, like things you can think about, or good theming. Good episodes are good. Okay episodes are okay, probably fairly flawed. And then forgettable episodes, because I don't think many episodes of the X Files are bad. There are just ones that are a bit forgettable, and I think that's a fair category. Those are our 4 categories. There are 24 episodes, and I might be here a while. So starting out, we have the pilot, which is the pilot of the show, and I think it does an amazing job at introducing everything. Not only does it introduce like our 2 main characters in Mulder and Scully, and it does it really well. It establishes Mulder is this believer and kind of quirky, weird, wants to find the truth, and Scully is more skeptical. She's more scientific. She's there to question Mulder, and that dynamic is established really well, as is their friendship, I think, as well. That kind of starts to form like so early on, and their chemistry is so apparent. Another thing I think it establishes really well is just its sense of self. Like the pilot feels just like the rest of at least season 1. It feels like the X Files already. I think overall, like season 1 takes a while to become the X Files, it does stumble here and there, and it takes some time like growing into itself. But the pilot doesn't feel like a massive jump in quality at all, which is great for a pilot. A big thing that it does to establish itself is its atmosphere in the first episode, which I love so much. It's so dark and damp, and it feels like something could come out of the bushes at any time. It could be an alien or like crazy guy or ghost. You just get this sense of like maybe you're being watched. Maybe there's something out there, which is definitely what the X-Files is all about. The general story of the first episode is like this abduction plot thing where people are going missing, I think, or being found dead in the woods. I'd say it's kind of confusing, but in a good way. There's a lot of misdirection that makes you feel a bit confused, a bit bewildered, and I think that's good in part because I think that's how Scully would feel on her first X-File with Mulder. She'd feel really out of sorts and like, what is going on? Like, there's so much stuff happening. So it puts you in her shoes, and I guess it puts a spotlight on Mulder as well, where you're like, whoa, he knows all this stuff. Like, he's kind of cool and quirky. A kind of good example of this is when they go to unearth one of the bodies, and there's like a monkey skeleton in there, and I still don't quite know why that's there. I think it's placed by the government or something, but it's such a good misdirection moment where you're like, what is going on? Like, what is this? This is weird and creepy. Similar with when Mulder hears the radio static and he puts an X on the ground, and it's like, what is he doing? There's just a lot of these small little weird mystery bits which really add to this episode, in my opinion. I think Mulder also talks about his sister and his backstory, so they get a lot of bonding in this episode. It just makes for a really good start. And then the ending is great too, where we see the cigarette smoking man for the first time, and he's really ominous, and he takes the chip or the device thingy Scully finds and puts it in this big warehouse, and it's really ominous, like, oh, there's like a bigger, like, evil government thing behind all of this. We'll get more into as we go through the series. So it is a phenomenal start. It sets up the vibes of the series, the characters, and I can't put it anywhere other than the amazing tier. So we'll plop that there. Deep Throat, the second episode, is also another good one. It starts really well with you have Mr. Budahas, or Lieutenant Budahas, I think, who is this man. He's in the corner of his bathroom, almost naked, like crying or like screaming or something, and he's covered in this infection. And then I think a SWAT team comes in, and it's like, what is going on? Like, this is really creepy and unnerving. And the episode follows, I think, Mulder trying to get into an air base because there's been UFO sightings, and he wants to see. You have some pretty fun moments. I think there's a moment where Mulder and Scully are like in their car or up on a ridge, and they see these like dancing UFO lights, and it's almost beautiful. It's a really nice scene. There's also kind of Mulder going off on his own and trying to see the UFOs and getting just steamrolled by the military. He gets like mind wiped. I think he sees the UFO, but then he gets mind wiped, and it's like, no, we're so close. We're so close to the truth, and Mulder gets just wiped, and it's frustrating. But you also know that it's just the beginning, so hopefully he'll get to see them again. The other thing with this episode is Deep Throat's introduced, who's like the informant, secret informant, who's kind of inside the government. It's their kind of inside man. And he starts giving hints to Mulder, and at the end he kind of alludes that Mulder's seen stuff, tells Mulder like they've been here for a very long time, and it's a really foreboding line from him. This episode sets up that character. I feel like it sets up more of the paranoia aspects of the series, the kind of government meddling of the series. It starts building the mythology of the X-Files, which is its overall plot. This episode is great for just building the overall story. It's got a really good tone, good moments with Mulder and Scully. It is a really solid episode. I do forget a bit in the middle and the beginning. It might be a little slow, but other than that, It is a solid episode. I'm going to put it in good. And now we go on to the first Monster of the Week episode, where I'm quickly just going to make the distinction of the mythology and Monster of the Week episodes. The mythology is your general kind of story episodes that build upon this mythos of the X-Files and just keep building this overall grand narrative. And then the Monster of the Week episodes are more standalone. They'll follow a monster or a creature or an event or something weird which Mulder and Scully have to solve. In this instance, the Monster of the Week is a really well-renowned one, Eugene Victor Toombs. The episode being Squeeze, by the way. And Toombs is really creepy. He's not like a vampire, a wolfman, or a ghost, or an alien, something you might expect to be the first kind of monstery thing. He is a kind of genetic freak hybrid thing where he can just like slide and crawl into the tightest spaces, and he wants to eat people's livers to survive, and it's creepy. This episode is great. It's such a good idea, and him kind of skulking in these dark corners and crawling through places. I think he goes after Scully at one point. It gets pretty tense. It is great. It's a really good episode. It's also probably the one most people think of if they've watched X-Files or don't know about X-Files. They've probably heard of Toombs, and for that reason I think this episode is going to go in good above Deep Throat. It isn't quite amazing to me. It is probably on the cusp. And then we go on to the fourth episode, which is Conduit, which unfortunately I don't really remember much about Conduit. I find it a bit of a forgettable episode. It follows the more disappearances or abductions of a girl called Ruby, and her family is talked to a lot. And there is a lot between kind of Mulder and his search for his sister. You learn a bit more about that in this episode. There's some good stuff with Scully and I think Section Chief Blevins. They talk about how Mulder might have a bit of a personal interest in cases like this because he sees himself in it and his abduction with his sister. And I think that side of Mulder is built up quite well, where he gets more emotional and sensitive. It's nice to see him want to help others, but it's also this flaw in a way as well, because he gets too into it. There isn't much else in this episode other than that for me. There's one really good scene where Scully is kind of on the stairs, and the little boy, Ruby's brother, is playing with like paper with ones and zeros on, binary, and he lines them all up, and it's Ruby's face. And I think the whole idea of the episode is this boy, he might be called Kevin, I'm not sure. He's the conduit for these aliens or something. But again, I've forgotten a lot about this episode. I think for that, like, it probably isn't a bad episode. If I watch it again, maybe I'll put it higher, but it's forgettable for me, sadly. So that's Conduit, and we'll move on to episode 5, which is Jersey Devil. Jersey Devil, a bit of a renowned one for being bad, and I feel like part of that might be because it has the name Jersey Devil, and the X-Files are tackling like a cryptid. That sounds really exciting. Instead, it turns out that the Jersey Devil is just more of a wild woman, which doesn't make for a great monster, and maybe that's why people don't like it as much. They think it might be a bit silly, or just was a bit of a waste of an idea. I like bits of this episode, though. There's some unintentionally funny parts, like someone draws a picture of the Jersey Devil, and it's a really bad, silly drawing, and it makes me laugh every time. The other thing I like is there's lots of urban environments where like Mulder's chasing down the Jersey Devil. That's really cool. The kind of atmosphere and tone of this episode can be good at times. There is this point at the ending where they're chasing down the Jersey Devil, and there's a bunch of police, and I'm pretty sure like Mulder's like, no, don't shoot her or something, and they just gun her down, and one of them says like it was like taking care of a wild animal, and it's so brutal, and I feel like it might be touching on police brutality there a bit. It just gets really dark. But yeah, I just like some of the parts of this episode. I don't think it's especially good though, but I enjoyed watching it and I remember it. So even though others might not rank it as high, I'm gonna put it in okay. I think it's an okay episode. I don't think it's that bad, but yeah, definitely one I'd I'd watch again probably. Next is episode 6, which is Shadows. Shadows is one where I don't think it's forgettable in a sense. It's hard to say. Like, the premise of, you have this girl called Lauren, and she is not being possessed, but she's being kind of followed by the ghost of her past boss, who's kind of protecting her in a fatherly way. There's some cool bits with the ghost kind of killing people and stuff, like this invisible entity kind of taking people down. Other than that, I struggle to understand what's happening with the corporation side of things, because assassins get sent after her. It must be because of like a money thing or a company thing. Maybe another rewatch would put this episode higher. There's this sense that the pacing of this episode is a bit weird. I feel like it kind of almost climaxes before the end, where these assassins attack her, and then you have another confrontation after, which isn't quite as big. The biggest thing is probably Mulder and Scully I don't remember them doing much in this episode. They feel a bit strung along. They're just kind of there to watch, which is okay sometimes. I just don't remember much about this episode other than the main monster, which blends in with some of the other ones. So I'm going to put Shadows, I think I might put it below Conduit even, because Conduit does have some value with the Mulder sister stuff. And move on to Ghost in the Machine. So this is a kind of AI gone rogue episode. I've seen some comparisons drawn to 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I have not seen, so I can't comment on HAL 1000, HAL 9000. I don't know. But we have the COS in this, the Central Operating System, and it starts killing people. And I think maybe a reason why some people don't like this episode is because it gets a bit cheesy with the Central Operating System kind of killing people and saying things like file deleted, stuff like that. It feels a bit cliche, I guess. There's also the scene where Scully is like in the air vents and the wind is like kind of pushing her around and stuff. I really like those parts. They remind me of later X-Files, where it does get a bit more cheesy. Maybe there's some more goofy bits. So it feels like some future X-Files has kind of seeped back into this episode. And I like the later seasons a lot, so this is good for me specifically. The other parts of this episode I like are there's like a smart house where the creator of the COS lives, and that being there and just some of the other parts of this episode make it feel a bit more modern, which I like. It doesn't feel like it was made in 1993 to me for some reason, and I don't know, it just gives the series a more modern sensibility to me. It's just an episode I remember quite fondly, and I just really enjoy. Although I think it's not an amazing episode by any means either. I think you could probably pick it apart quite a bit. So I'm gonna put it in okay, and maybe on the higher end. Okay, episode 8 is Ice, which is a very well loved and classic episode where it's basically the plot of The Thing. Mulder and Scully go to I think is it Alaska or Antarctica? I think it's Alaska. So it's all icy, that's what matters, and they're trapped in a research base where things have gone wrong. I struggle with The Thing a bit. I love the gore, I love the practical effects, I think that's great, but I didn't feel an emotional connection with any characters in The Thing. And what Ice does is, because you have Mulder and Scully, like, you care about them, even though you've only watched like 7 episodes. Well, I guess that's like 7 hours basically you've known them for, which is more than the people in The Thing. You have like a bond with them, and when the paranoia kind of creeps in, when all this tension builds and people are like arguing because they don't know who the parasite's in and stuff, it feels like just gripping. And Mulder and Scully's trust is really tested, and it's a really good character building episode for them. Really helps like chisel them out more in these early episodes. Just tense, creepy, really good atmosphere, really nice set, really good Mulder and Scully moments. And for those reasons, it has to be amazing. It is one of the best episodes of season 1. Frequently said to be one of the best episodes ever, and people's favorite by a lot of people. Although I like the pilot a little bit more. Yeah, so it's gonna go right behind the pilot. And we will move on to one of the worst rated episodes ever, one of the least liked, and probably one of the only ones I will say is bad, which is Space. The thing with Space is it has these ideas which I think are really good and really interesting and could make for a good episode, but they are executed really poorly. You have this kind of space ghost parasite thing which has imprinted itself on, I think, someone who saw the face of Mars, and it's using him to sabotage future space expeditions and missions and stuff. The alien thing is trying to like prevent people from going up to space and stuff, and it's like sabotaging stuff. It's trying to stop us from seeing what's up there, which I think is really creepy, but the way the episode handles it is not great. There's a lot of complaints about like a lot of stock footage being used, which is like ho-hum to me. I don't really mind, but the definitely the ghost face on the astronauts and stuff that appears is a bit silly. It just doesn't work, and the rest of the episode is kind of forgettable. Definitely one of the ones I really tuned out for, probably. And like I said, it's one of the only ones I'd probably say is bad, so it's definitely going in forgettable, but below Shadows. There'd be quite a bit of a gap. I'm not going to make its own tier for it, though. We're just going to move on to episode 10, Fallen Angel, which is one people seem to like more than me. I find it a bit forgettable, sadly. This follows Mulder going after a fallen UFO. I think it's a good hook premise. If I remember correctly, he's like in dark clothes and he's like going to take pictures of it, and it's quite a nice scene. There's also the introduction of Max Fennick, who will come back later on in better episodes, in my opinion. And he's a cool character. It's nice to see these other people who believe like Mulder, even though they're more of a stereotypical kind of UFO nut kind of character. Still, I like his inclusion. I like how he kind of meshes with Mulder. The other parts of this episode I just forget about. There's an invisible alien, which is a little goofy. A cool idea though, but I just don't remember much other than that. It's sadly just a bit forgettable. I think I'd put it below Conduit. Again, some of these with a rewatch might go up into okay. I feel like Fallen Angel and Conduit would probably fit that quite well. Moving on to episode 11, Eve, is one I really like, actually. It starts out with this great scene of this father on a swing set and their daughter, and these two people come over, and they're kind of like, hey, what's up? What's going on? And the father has been exsanguinated of their like blood, so it instantly kind of hooks you. The early parts of the episode are really good. Mulder and Scully are kind of scrambling to figure out like what's going on. Mulder gives his ideas about like alien cattle mutilation stuff, and Scully thinks it's going to be a kidnapping thing. And then they find out that there's been another murder that happened at the exact same time, which I think was an exsanguination as well. And they find out that the child of that family and the child of the previous family are identical, which is another like really weird thing. Like, what's going on? They think people are coming to like take the girls, so they go on a road trip with them, which is a nice kind of set piece I really like. I think it's quite silly. And you figure out before Mulder and Scully that the girls are the ones who are kind of the evil ones, so we kind of have an evil twin thing going on here, but it's not really supernatural. It has this kind of military explanation thing where they are kind of remnants of a cloning project of super soldiers, and you meet these other Eves who are grown up. And I just think it's a really compelling episode. It just kind of grabs you. It's a lot of fun. The two girls who are pretty young, like they are great. They're really creepy. They act really well. And I think overall this is a good episode. It has to go, I think, below Deep Throat. But it is good. It's great. Okay, moving on to another Monster of the Week episode. We have episode 12, Fire. I remember it quite fondly. It's a fun one to watch. The thing I remember immediately is there are parts set in the UK, which feels a bit weird, being in X-Files. We get to see a lot of the villains perspective in this, and he is called Cecil Lively or Lively or something like that. Although he goes through an alias, I think Bob, through this episode, and he is a kind of pyrokinetic, I guess. He's been killing members of parliament. I wanted to say prime ministers, but there's only one prime minister, and he sends letters to their wives. He is a really cool villain. He has some really creepy scenes. There's this one with these kids where he is like smoking, and he's like, "Do you want to see a magic trick?" And he lights the cigarette on fire, and he kind of offers them to the kids, and you are like watching the scene, and you're like, "Oh no! Like, get away from this guy. He's creepy." They could have handled his motivations a bit better, though. It's a bit unclear, like, why he does what he does. Because I think after he sends, like, these love letters and stuff to these women, he kills them or burns them. I'm not sure if there's some weird psychosexual angle there. There is some stuff where they bring up that a Cecil Lively, I think, died in a kind of satanic cult ritual as a sacrifice. Like, the building burnt down, which could explain where he got his powers from, and maybe he is just like an agent of chaos after those events, but it's kind of left to interpretation. I wouldn't have minded if it was a bit clearer, though. I think the other parts of this episode, which kind of, I don't know, they're fun, but they kind of in hindsight drag it down, I think. You have Phoebe Green, who is an interesting character, Mulder's ex-love interest, British with the Scotland Yard. Her intro's great, but her as a character doesn't quite fit with Mulder, I think. Like, later on, when you learn more about Mulder, she just isn't the type of person who I think would be with Mulder. It's a bit odd, maybe a bit of a nitpick. The bigger one, though, is Mulder's fear of fire, which for the episode is cool because he gets to conquer his fear. It doesn't come up again, and it doesn't come up previous, so it's a bit of a weird inclusion that, yeah, they could have thought about that more. I think it was in there because Chris Carter is afraid of fire, and he wanted to add that to Mulder, but it just didn't go anywhere after this. At least I don't remember it going anywhere. I still have a few seasons left, but I doubt it's going to show up again. So even though there's elements which are a bit like mixed, I think this is a really enjoyable episode. I wanted to put it in okay. I might actually put it in good, because it is a fun episode. Let's fill out that good. From one good episode, actually a few good episodes, to another good one is Beyond the Sea, which is a big fan favorite episode for a lot of people. People usually cite that Brad Dourif and his acting as Luther Lee Boggs is one of the big parts of why they love this episode. I'm not as familiar with him, though, so I don't quite get that from him. Like, he's really good in this episode as Luther Lee Boggs, but people seem to have like a really strong connection to him, which I just don't. Who I do have a more strong connection with is Scully's dad, who is Don S. Davis. He is Major Briggs in Twin Peaks, so that character, I don't know, just spoke to me a bit more. And because he's passed away, and he passes away as Scully's dad in this episode, I felt more of a connection to that and Scully. Another kind of interesting fact is, obviously, Donna Briggs in Twin Peaks. Brad Dourif, I think, had roles in Blue Velvet and Dune, Lynch's Dune. So this episode has quite a few Lynch-centric characters, I guess. Onto the actual episode. So Scully's father dies, and you have this criminal who's locked up, Luther Lee Boggs, who can seemingly predict future events. And it's all the test of Scully's belief, and it's really emotional, and it has this really somber atmosphere to the episode, which I really like. Mulder takes a bit of a back seat, which is nice, because Scully gets just more focus, more utilization, because she feels a bit underutilized. I think at this point, like, Mulder's had much more of the focus, and I think the X-Files works better when Mulder and Scully get their time to shine, because they are the protagonists. It's not one of the other, although them having like their own episodes, I think is great when they get more of a focus, and this is definitely Scully's, and it's really good. Atmosphere, Gillian Anderson's acting is amazing, the premise is good, it's tense. It is a a really good episode. I struggle to say it's amazing, though. I don't quite have that connection as other people. It is definitely... Ooh, do I put it above Squeeze? Ooh, no. I don't think it quite beats Squeeze. I think Squeeze is a little more iconic and fun. So we're going to put it there. And move on to episode 14, Gender Bender, with a bit of an iffy title, I guess, these days. And I'd say the content of the episode is also a bit... It's not something that would get produced today. I like the idea of this alien that can change sex, but it's just a bit weird. And I've heard some people say, like, it's almost like they're saying transgender people and the Amish, because it also deals with that. They're so weird and alien that they're actually aliens. Yeah, that comparison could be a bit weird. So it gets a few points knocked off, but I don't really want to fault it for that. It's quite old, and I don't think it's trying to harm anyone. I do like the ideas, though, it presents. It is a little muddled between these two plots of this rogue alien who's going around killing people, and then the more Amish-like commune, and Mulder and Scully are kind of going back and forth. There's just a bit of a lack of focus, maybe. But it makes up for that somewhat with its directing and its atmosphere, which is really nice and dark. There's some really good kind of city scenes and club scenes, which have some really nice atmospheric lighting. The part when Mulder is in these like weird clay tunnels, I also really like. It's just kind of just cool and weird and X-Files-y to me. Also when they're looking into the barn and they see the ceremony. And I also like the end, even though it feels a bit like Mulder and Scully didn't really have much to do with how it ends. Like they just don't really do much. I think the commune just disappears, which I think is really creepy and cool. There is that aspect, though, that, I don't know, Mulder and Scully just feel like they're going on a wild goose chase, which I guess sometimes is fun. So overall, this episode, it definitely takes some hits in some areas. I still enjoy watching it, or I enjoyed watching it. I'd probably watch it again. I wonder how it would fare, to be honest. I'm going to put it below Ghost in the Machine, though, in okay. I still think it's an okay episode overall. I'm going to move on to episode 15, which is Lazarus, which is a bit of a weirder episode because it doesn't focus on Mulder and Scully as much. It focuses on a character called Jack Willis, or more so the criminal who inhabits his body, Dupree, because this is a body swap episode where there's a bank robbery, Scully's involved, I think, and Jack is involved, and the heist goes wrong. I think people die, and Jack and Dupree are taken to the same hospital area, and I think the implication is they both die at the same time, and Dupree is revived in Jack's body. And there's this weird thing with the tattoo Dupree has, and I think it transfers to Jack. I'm not sure what that's about. Like, maybe the tattoo is the thing that swaps bodies. It's a bit odd. So you have this criminal kind of pretending to be an FBI agent to find his partner who escaped, a kind of partner in crime, and maybe like girlfriend or something. So there's a kind of fun kind of cat and mouse game there. It's also someone Scully had a relationship with, so she has a bit of a connection. The problem is Jack just doesn't have enough screen time, and all we know about him is, I think, pretty much what Scully talks about of him, so there isn't a very good connection there. Another thing I've seen is, what if it was Mulder who was originally meant to have his body swapped? Because that would be way more interesting. And that does happen later in the Dreamland duology where Mulder swaps bodies, and those two episodes are amazing. They're some of my favorite episodes. But yeah, it might just be too early on for a story like that, and trying to resolve this one with Mulder being the body swap one would probably need a lot of rewriting and working with. That's what I feel like this episode probably needs, is some more rewrites, some more tweaking probably. It's still an okay episode, though. It's okay to watch. I would probably put it maybe just below Gender Bender and above the Jersey Devil. And then we move on to Young at Heart, which is another one where I feel like there is an interesting concept here that just isn't done as well as it should have been, where Mulder is being stalked by John Barnett, a really notorious criminal Mulder caught in his early days. and he's come back and he hasn't aged, which is like pretty good X-File, I think. There, I'm not sure I like how they explore that. It's a bit weird. He has this salamander hand, and I think there's like some experimentation with maybe salamander genes, because salamanders can grow back limbs and stuff, and also like people with a very rare medical condition. I don't remember it too well. I don't remember it being too good either. There's some connections, I think, to the government and Deep Throat in this episode somehow. I do think there's some good tension moments and some good creepy moments in this, because Mulder's kind of being hunted and he's going after Scully as well. And there is a good callback between the kind of beginning where you see Mulder failed to like kill John Barnett. He never took the shot, but later on at the end of this episode he does. I don't want to put it in forgettable because the premise is fairly good, and there is some good stuff, and I think I might be underselling it more than the others, but I'm going to put it below Jersey Devil though, in okay. And we're going to move on to episode 17, EBE, which is a mythology episode. So the mythology is back. We're going to get more world building. There is some good stuff introduced here, actually. We get the lone gunman for the first time, which at this point I don't think I cared about them much, but I'm glad they're introduced here for future episodes and future things, because they've got to be introduced somewhere. Maybe if I went back and watched it now, I'd like it a bit more, because I just get the characters now, but maybe other people will get them like from the get-go. They'll think they're cool. They kind of just muddled into the episode for me. You also have a lot of government hiding things. You've got Deep Throat kind of meddling with Mulder and Scully, and I remember there being this kind of frantic chase for the truth where Mulder and Scully are driving after, I think, a crashed UFO or a crashed something. They're trying to find evidence of the aliens. The ending is really good, where Mulder is like just a bit too slow to, I think, see a live alien or see the alien, and it's another moment of like, we're so close, we're so close. The X-Files does that really well in season 1. And you have Deep Throat talk to Mulder after that, where he says that there's this like rule or standard procedure that aliens need to be killed like when they land, which is really dark and paints humans in a really evil light. Just reveals like the government, the shady shadow organizations are the real bad guys. It's a good episode. It is one I definitely good. I think I'd probably put it below Beyond the Sea, just above Deep Throat there. Moving on, episode 18, Miracle Man. Okay, so Miracle Man is one of the more religious-centric episodes of the show, which you will get from time to time, mainly because Mulder has his belief in aliens. Scully is religious, so she has her own kind of belief and faith to deal with, and some of these episodes are really good. Some of them just aren't, and Miracle Man is the first of those, and it just doesn't really hit for me. There's some interesting bits with like this healing man, and it draws on like religious healings and faith healings. Oh, I forget what they're called. Yeah, faith healing. When they're like shouting and stuff and like, oh Lord, I'm gonna heal you, stuff like that, which is really weird to most people who aren't into that or who aren't American, and probably suitable to make an X-File out of. But it just doesn't do too much here. I think Supernatural has an episode in season 1, and they both kind of just meld together for me. They just don't really mean much. I think there is some nice scenes, maybe. It just kind of, it's a forgettable one for me, sadly. I think I'm going to put it maybe just above Shadows. I think it has a bit more meat to it. It does kind of introduce this religious side to the X-Files and Scully, so it gets a little bit of props there, but not too much. Then we move into episode 19, which is Shapes, which is a werewolf episode that blends werewolves and Native American culture. Two kind of mixed results. A lot of people don't like this episode, or they think it's one of the worst in the first season. I think I kind of like it. I didn't really get any disrespect on the Native American side of things. Not that I know much about Native Americans, so maybe it's really bad. I liked all the characters, even though I think maybe some are a bit kind of on edge. That's why people don't like them. But I just kind of liked them all. I liked how the werewolf was done. They don't show too much of it, I think. And the ending where Mulder and Scully are kind of in this house with the werewolf is really cool. I just think it's really well shot and directed. There's some other interesting tidbits, like apparently this is the first X-File, I think. Like they've gone back and revisited it. Bit of an odd one, but cool fact, I guess. And there is a foreboding line when I think the Native American chief or the older man says he'll see Mulder in 8 years, which I'm not sure ever happens, but I don't know. I like this episode. I think it's quite fun. Yeah, I think I'd probably put it in. I can't put it in good because it has some pacing problems, but I'll put it at the top of okay. Moving on to definitely a good episode is episode 20, Darkness Falls, which is it's an episode a bit like Ice, where Mulder and Scully are trapped in a location, but this time it's a cabin in the woods, and there are these ancient insects from trees that have been cut down, which just devour people, I think, or like cocoon them. Their main weakness is light, so in the day they're safe, and at night they need light or they're gonna die. And there is just some amazing tense moments in this where you don't know how much light they're gonna have, if the light's gonna go off or their oil lights or something. Even though, like, there's like 11 seasons of the X-Files after this, so Mulder and Scully clearly are gonna live. It's really tense, and I just felt like, are they gonna die? Like, whoa. It just has a great atmosphere. I think some great acting. I love the setting of the woods and the creature. It is a really good episode. We're gonna put it, I think, just below Squeeze. Sorry, Beyond the Sea. I think it's a bit better. And the next one is also a really good episode. We have Tombs, which marks the return of Victor Eugene Toombs. They got back to him really quick, probably because he was so popular. And I think this is a great kind of return to him. I love the court stuff where Mulder is like shouting and he's clearly like killed people. He's a genetic freak. On one hand, it's really funny. I just love the idea of like Toombs in the court like sniggering, like he's done all these things and he's gonna get free on being on something. I can't quite remember. I think that's maybe one element of the episode which doesn't make as much sense. Toombs should probably still be in jail. Like, he clearly did kill people, but instead he gets to go free. And then you have Mulder and Scully knowing Toombs is free, and Toombs knowing that they know him, and him trying to blend into society again. And it's really nice actually, because I think it's one of the times where Scully just kind of believes with Mulder because she knows Toombs is this weird killer. I just really like it. Like, I love Toombs being a weird, what does he do? He does like pest control, and he like licks dead birds and stuff. He's such a weirdo. And him going to like frame Mulder is really interesting and kind of funny and creepy. The final, I think, confrontation where Toombs is naked and like trying to fight them in ducks and stuff. I think he gets crushed by an escalator as well. I just really like this episode. It also has Skinner in, I think, which is the only appearance of him in season 1. And I love Skinner. He's a great character. And he's like discussing with cigarette smoking man at the end, so you get some cool stuff there with the like FBI higher ups like discussing. I don't know. It's a really fun episode, and I think it's better than Squeeze. Actually, at least I remember. That's how I remember things. Do you know what? It might be amazing. I might put it in amazing, actually, thinking back, because there's just a lot I like about it. So yeah, we're gonna put it there, and move on to Born Again, which is a weird one. It's a reincarnation story where this dead policeman gets reincarnated into a little girl. By the end of the episode, it's more like he can choose to leave or be dormant in her. Weird concept that I'm not sure gets quite enough like attention on it. Like, it could be more fleshed out. And I kind of conflate this episode with Shadows because they're both these invisible entities, I think, taking on people and killing them. out of Shadows and Born Again, I think Born Again might be the better one. There's some just good scenes in there. There's a cool bus kill where the entity or something like traps someone's scarf in the bus door. Which I feel like you can see where that goes. There's also the ending. I remember being pretty cool and atmospheric in this like dark room with this fish tank. It just makes it a bit more memorable than Shadows, and the whole like reincarnation thing is a little bit more interesting than this ghost. Yeah, we're gonna keep it in okay. I think we're gonna put it above Jersey Devil and below Lazarus. Maybe I'd feel different if I watched it again. I'm not too sure, but it's definitely one of the middle of the road episodes. And then we have episode 23, which is Roland. This one, I don't think I minded too much on first watch. There's some insensitivity when it comes to how disabilities are portrayed. I think they call Roland mentally handicapped, and I don't think they clearly say like what's going on with Roland. I think he's portrayed fairly well though in the episode, and there's an interesting dichotomy between Roland, who seems like a really nice guy. You have him, and then you have his evil genius twin brother's frozen head, who is making him do these killings because they've stolen, I think, Roland's brother's work. And there's some really uncomfortable scenes, I think, where Roland is kind of crying and he like clearly doesn't want to do this. And I think there's some value to the uncomfortableness. It definitely is creepy. It could be a bit more sensitive maybe overall. But I think this is an okay episode again. The X-File isn't the best overall, like it's not too creepy or supernatural, but it holds itself fine, I think. That said, I think it's going to be in the low okay. I think we're going to put it maybe just below Born Again. And move on to the final episode, episode 24, the Erlenmeyer Flask, which is the final episode of season 1, and it is great. It introduces a lot of elements to the mythology, because it's a mythology episode, like the green blood and what that does to people when it's exposed to air. I think it mentions purity as well, because the password Scully needs is like purity control, which will become more relevant later on in the series. But the bigger part of this episode is there's a lot of like pressure and tension. There's some really good scenes where Scully finds this like alien embryo, and then you have Mulder being like kidnapped and captured because he's been snooping. And there's this element of hopelessness towards the end and just desperation when Scully's meeting up with Deep Throat, and it all comes to a head when the exchange happens and they shoot Deep Throat, and Deep Throat's last words to Scully are trust no one. And there's just such an atmosphere of like hopelessness and we've just lost like the one inside guy we have. We don't know who to trust anymore. It's just, yeah, this kind of darkness to this episode. It's really good. And then the X-Files get shut down. We see the cigarette smoking man take the embryo back into the same storage area we saw in episode 1. Again, like this circle kind of storytelling. We see this right at the end, like we saw at the end of the first episode. I really love that. Just before that, we get a scene where Mulder is like, no, I'm not going to stop. We're not going to stop. And you feel that kind of like there is still hope. They're not gonna give up here, which I really like. It's a really good ending to the first season. But yeah, a really solid episode. Not the best ever, because I like the pilot a bit more. I think just what it does to set everything up and its atmosphere is just great. So that's definitely my best one. With that, we have ranked all the episodes of the first season of the X-Files. From, I guess, bottom to top, we have Space, Shadows, Miracle Man, Fallen Angel, Conduit, Unforgettable, Young at Heart, The Jersey Devil, Roland, Born Again, Lazarus, Gender Bender, Ghost in the Machine, and Shapes in OK. Have Fire, Eve, Deep Throat, EBE, Beyond the Sea, Darkness Falls and Squeeze in good, and Tombs, Ice, the Erlenmeyer Flask, and the pilot in amazing. That's season 1 of the X-Files ranked. It is an excellent series. I think everyone should watch it. Even the episodes Unforgettable are worth watching. I guess even Space, like, just watch them all. And like I said, I might make more tier lists of the other seasons, and eventually the While of X-Files video. I'd love to do that. But yeah, that's everything I think for now. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, hope you found some value in this, and I hope you watch the X-Files.